Welcome to Masters of Regeneration Radio. Conversations with humans who dare to reimagine our place on planet Earth. Earth is changing fast. Evolution happening in real time. An intimate, circular understanding of nature and living systems. We are the land. The land is us. Welcome to Masters of Regeneration Radio. Conversations with humans who dare to reimagine our place on planet Earth. Earth is changing fast. Evolution happening in real time. An intimate, circular understanding of nature and living systems. We are the land. The land is us.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Masters of Regeneration podcast. I want to remind you all that the idea and the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you and everyone reconnect with an evolutionary understanding of our place on the planet and to a more cyclical relationship to the environment. We live in a very exciting time. Thanks to science, we've been able to look more intimately at our own biology. And today I'm really excited because Michael Fossel is here. He's an expert in aging and wrote an amazing book called The Telomerase Revolution, which I read a couple of years ago. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hey, Thomas.
Good. So I'm particularly fascinated with getting to know myself in any possible way. And in the past 3-4 years, I've done 23andMe, which does your whole genetic ancestry. I've done Viome, which is a new company that does a genetic sequencing of your gut biome. So they look at the RNA in your digestive system, and by sequencing that, they can tell you the function of the bacteria, fungi, and viruses in your stomach, in your whole digestive system, and give you food recommendations and all that. So there are very exciting things happening with our genome, our epigenome, and with anti-aging science. And so I'm really excited to be talking with you today about aging, about telomeres, about cells, the different cells that we have, and all that stuff. And probably you have a lot of new stuff to tell me, the work you've been doing more recently.
Well, I was going to go right back to what you said about cyclic phenomena in life. How did you put that? Say that again, because that's the key.
Yeah, I think to a large extent, I mean, we've had until very recently, a couple decades ago or 3 or something, I think we went down a very linear relationship with our environment and our place in the food chain, which is the planet. I think we live in a genetic, it's not a belief, it's a fact. I mean, it's biology. We live in a genetic sort of conversation on the planet, and life evolves. And all the genetic memory of the earth is contained in food, in air, in water, right? And because I'm a chef and I'm interested in food, I'm always thinking, okay, what is it that I'm consuming? What genetic information am I putting in my body? And what kind of, what is the state of this life that I carry that I'm going to pass on if I ever have children, and so on and so forth. And so I think a more cyclical understanding of our relationship with the environment and our place in the food chain is crucial today.
I couldn't agree more. What you've been talking about are the verbs. You've been talking about eating and living and recycling. It's not the nouns that are important, it's the verbs. Let me give you a funny idea about this. We talked about the genes. And the
Yeah.
genes are sort of the nouns, but the real question is gene expression and what happens. So I'll give you an analogy. You buy a house, okay?
Yeah.
And the house is your genes. And we've got two houses, one of which falls apart in 50 years, the other of which is in excellent shape 50 years later. What's the difference? It's not the genes, it's the maintenance, it's the verbs, it's the recycling, it's the cyclicity of all this. Is what you do to it. It's the maintenance. So, when we talk about aging, most people tend to concentrate on the nouns. They talk about the genes.
Yeah.
But it really is about gene expression. And the people talk about aging, they concentrate on entropy and wear and tear. But that's not the key. The key is the maintenance function. So the reason that somebody has a house and 50 years later is in good shape is because they maintained it. They went out and they painted it and fixed the plumbing and repaired the floor and fixed the ceiling and did the roof. They kept it up. That's the difference. So when we're talking about aging and regeneration, it's the same with routine. It's a verb. It's the regeneration of it. It's not the noun of it. It's the regenerating. It's what's going on in maintenance that's the key to all of this and to age-related diseases. So some people get this. Some people are still stuck in the nouns. But once you begin to understand that it's a dynamic phenomenon, not a static one. It's not just your genes. It's what you do with the genes. That's where the key is.
Yeah, there is a worldwide a regenerative revolution happening from agriculture to ranching to medicine, where everybody's thinking more in those terms. I'm not so familiar with what's happening at the genetic level or cellular level in terms of regeneration, but apart from stem cells or something, we can talk more about that. But it's that understanding that there are things that are cyclical and the earth needs to receive back those ingredients, if you will, and get nutrients from that and process that whole thing, the whole chemical process of life on earth, basically.
Well, yes. I mean, and you don't even stop there, but just to stick with what you just said, for example, is there enough water on this planet? Yeah, there is, as long as you keep recycling it. That naturally there's a recycling process. Water evaporates, forms clouds, forms rain, forms rivers, forms groundwater. We have wells, we drink it. It's not that there's not enough water. It's just a question of the recycling time and the quality of the recycling. It's like that old question I used to ask, how much water do you need if you travel to Mars? Well, if you figure out how many liters one person uses and you put 6 people there and multiply it by 2 years, it sounds like a lot of water, but you don't need that. You just need to recycle it efficiently. And that's what we do with water. We do that with oxygen. We do that with carbon dioxide in plants. Carbon, everything we're looking at in the world tends to get recycled. It's a question of the speed and the quality of the recycling time. It's not that you have an amount. And the same thing is really true of cellular integrity. If you're looking down at aging and age-related diseases, it's not a question of how many mitochondria do you have, how many genes do you have. No, it's a question of how well are they maintained, what's the recycling time. And that's true right up including things like Alzheimer's disease and beta amyloid.
Alzheimer's disease and what? Sorry?
Beta amyloid.
I don't know what that is.
Back about 110 years ago, when Alzheimer's was first described, one of the first things people realized was that when you look at autopsy, people had these beta amyloid plaques in the brain. And the assumption was that caused Alzheimer's. Well, it doesn't. It's a biomarker for Alzheimer's, but it's not the cause of it. It's just one of the things that happens.
Okay.
But some people tend to focus on how much beta amyloid you have, and it's missing the question. The real question is how fast you turn it over. And it's a different question. It's a dynamic way of looking at the system rather than a static way of looking at the amount.
Yeah. How fast you turn over the beta amyloid you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's look at a simpler example. Let's just look at the skin of our faces. A lot of people think that what happens is you have collagen and elastin and it gets cross-linked and damaged over time and you get wrinkles. No. What's really going on is that it's continually being turned over. The collagen molecules are being created, broken down, internalized, broken down, built into new molecules, new collagens. There's a turnover process. Same for elastin. But that process slows with age. So it's not a static amount of collagen or elastin you have that gets damaged. The question is, how fast is it recycled?
That's fascinating. It's just what's happening on the planet with the carbon in the atmosphere, basically.
It's the same analogy.
You're
looking at things from a verb standpoint, not a noun standpoint. You're looking at it dynamically, not statically.
So yeah, so the cyclical relationship makes a lot of sense at many different levels.
Yeah, and regeneration really has been the heart of biology ever since biology first began on this planet 4.5 billion years ago. It's continually being recreated. It's not that you have a DNA molecule and it sticks there forever. It's
Yeah.
continually being repaired, replaced, fixed. The same with other molecules that are just being turned over. But regeneration is a natural part of biology.
Sweet, beautiful. So conceptually, we're that's the sort of like the foundation of our conversation. Now, I'm really excited about the idea of okay. So in terms of nutrition, this is what I teach to my students: how to eat so that you age well and you're in your 70s or 80s and you're not necessarily suffering arthritis or other chronic diseases because that are caused by inflammation and a bunch of other things happening in your gut. But I would imagine everybody gets excited about the idea of having something to support that, which is your work or your research, at least helping out with telomeres and other things to support a healthier aging or a healthier old age or free of these things such as Alzheimer or atherosclerosis or
Well, let me go back to the house analogy for
yeah
nutrition. Okay,
yeah
if I've got a house and I want it to live essentially forever, I have to maintain it on a regular basis. So, for
yeah
example, one of the things I may want to do is make sure I repair the roof so I don't get damage from rain and the weather in general. Now, that's part of the recycling process. I continually maintain it. But one of the questions that comes up is what quality do I use for the roof? Do I use paper shingles? Do I use metal? And it makes a big difference. That's the nutrition.
yeah
If you're ending up using paper shingles, they're going to tear right off no matter how fast you can maintain them. That's like eating junk food. So, the nutrition makes a difference, but you still have to have maintenance. It doesn't do to have excellent quality food and not put it in place. I could have a full metal, standing seam roof to put on, but if I don't put it on, if I don't maintain the cells, I'm not doing any good. So there's a linkage here. You need both good nutrition, good materials, and
yes.
you also need to actually maintain the cell. You can't just have one or the other. You've got to have both.
And what do you mean by maintenance of the cell?
Well, in this case, what you find is that some cells maintain themselves essentially indefinitely. For example, the germ cell line or very basic stem cell lines. So I could say, for example, if I look at you and I say, how old are you? You could say a couple of decades. And I'd say, yes, but where did your cell come from? It came from your mother, who presumably had already been around for a couple of decades. Her mother had been around for a couple of decades. So in a very real technical biological sense, you are 4.5 billion years old. The cell line, looking backwards, maintained itself indefinitely. Yes, there were changes. It mutated, it grew, it altered over time. That's why you're a human being. But it maintained itself. So that process is ongoing in cells. And what you find is in some cell lines, for example, somatic cells, that they continue to divide, you turn down the maintenance process. Again, it's like saying my germ cell line, my ova, my sperm, a well-maintained house. Every day I go out and check the house and maintain it. Whereas many of my somatic cells, the answer is, I'll let it go for 20 years. I won't worry about the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, the paint, nothing. I'm not going to worry about it. Well, the cells age. So there's no need for cells to age. It's just that some do, some don't, and that actually can be altered.
Beautiful. I remember that in your book. You talked about how sperm cells and I can't remember the names of the other cells, but they're telomeres, and then we'll go back and circle back to define that so that our audience can understand what we're talking about. But the telomeres don't shorten. Is that correct?
Well, telomeres are always shortened, but in certain cells, they are re-lengthened. So, for example, again, your ova, your sperm, the cells that end up creating you, well, those are cells that maintain the telomeres. So it shortens a bit, they re-lengthen it. It shortens a bit, they re-lengthen it.
Okay.
Whereas in most of the cells, for example, in your skin, in your face, and your hands, those cells shorten, and they shorten, and they shorten. They don't re-lengthen. Some cells do, some don't.
Okay. So, but you were saying that can be altered.
Yes, we've known now for 20 years that what we can do is reset the process of re-lengthening cells. So, for example, you can take old human skin cells, re-lengthen the telomeres, and get young human skin cells. You can do the same thing for human tissues. So, for example, I can grow young human skin from old human skin. I can grow young coronary artery tissue from old coronary artery, diseased coronary arteries. So we know it can be done. The question is, can we do it to you? And will it be effective at preventing age-related disease? And the answer seems to be almost certainly yes.
And is that done through telomeres or?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And the question is, telomeres by themselves don't cause aging. Telomeres sort of are the conductor of the orchestra. The real important process is the change in gene expression. Again,
Okay.
it's a dynamic process. It's the question of not how many genes you have, but how you use them. So the telomere is sort of the key player in this. And from my perspective, the real question is, where's the most effective point of intervention? The answer is the telomere. And then the question is, how is the most effective way of doing that? And the answer seems, from our perspective, to be to put in a normal human gene and let it express itself to reset telomere length and then essentially drift away. So yeah, it seems to work pretty well in animals. And as I say, it works very nicely in both human cells and human tissues. So it's time we take it to human trials.
Okay, and that's happening. Could you define what telomeres is?
Yeah, telomerase or telomerase or any other way. You know the rule about pronunciation.
Yeah.
You're always right, the other people are wrong. As long as they can understand you,
Yes.
there. It's like everybody has an accent but me. That's true of everybody on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So telomerase, or in the Japanese, teramarasu. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
What it is it's an enzyme that resets the length of the telomere. There are actually different pieces of it, and it gets very complicated. But telomerase is the enzyme that re-lengthens your telomeres, and that allows you to reset the gene expression to a normal pattern that's typical of young cells.
And that's the enzyme that's present in ova and sperm and so on.
Correct. Or, yes.
Right. Yes.
Simple way to put it, but yes.
Yes. I mean, the idea is to, I hope a lot of people will be able to listen to this podcast. So I want to try to explain it as simply as possible.
No, it's bad enough that we have to say telomere and telomerase. I'm sorry about that.
Telomerase.
And amyloid. No, sorry I mentioned it. Okay?
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, are there human trials being done with telomeres or telomerase?
Actually,
or whatever?
there have been a number of them informally over the past few years looking at telomerase activators and very tantalizing results. But our best guess is that the telomerase activators that are available, like astraligosides, are not nearly as effective as we need them to be.
Okay.
So there have been a number of trials in animals looking at ways of turning on and off telomerase. And the human trial that we're planning will probably begin next year, that is 2019.
All right. So, because as far as I know, the astragaloside is from astragalus, which is an Indian or Chinese herb.
Correct.
Correct me. Is it Chinese or both?
It was been used in China for well more than 2,000 years. Yes.
And so, what's being used as telomerase activators are high doses or doses in high concentrations of the compound that's active in astragalus?
The analogy is this: the telomerase enzyme, the gene that produces that enzyme, is present in all your cells. The gene is there; it's just locked up.
Okay.
So what you can do is either use something like a key, a little telomerase activator that lets a little bit of it be expressed, not very well, or what we're going to do is actually take a normal human telomerase gene, put it in the cells, and have an unlocked copy that expresses itself just long enough to reset telomere length and then goes away again.
Okay. And how does it?
So we're putting in the gene. We're putting in the entire blueprint rather than the lock to the safe that gets the blueprint. We're putting in the whole blueprint itself.
And how would it continuously keep doing that? Or once you've planted it in the cell? Oh, okay. Okay.
What we needed to do is express telomerase just long enough to reset telomere lengths so that gene expression goes back to, as it were, a young normal, so that you lose your disease, for example, Alzheimer's disease.
I see.
Or something as simple as wrinkles. But same idea. We express it just long enough to reset telomere, and then the gene, as far as we're concerned, can disappear, which it usually does. And then we end up needing to retreat you in a couple of years, say 10 years.
That's what I was going to ask. Presumably, the effect would wear off again, and you would sort of start the aging process again, or the aging.
It's like going down. It's like going down an escalator. And
Yeah.
what we're saying is, all right, we're going to put you back at the top of the escalator. All done. Except that in 10 years, we may have to bring you back up the escalator again. Okay. Escalator's still moving. Just we reset you at the top. That's all.
I'm curious, what's the difference between stem cell therapy and this?
Well, let me give you an example of it. And I'll look at knees. Knees are a nice, simple example of this. And we're going to take 3 different kinds of therapy. Right now, if I have terrible osteoarthritis, I go to my orthopedic surgeon and I complain, and he puts in an artificial knee joint. Okay? He never cured the disease. He just replaced the joint totally. And
Yeah.
it's effective. It's expensive. It has some risks. But there we are. That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Now, we'll go down one more step. We'll say, what about stem cell therapy? Let's take out some of your stem cells from, for example, your bone marrow and put them in your knee joint and see if they can regrow some of the missing tissue. Okay? That doesn't change the fact that the rest of your chondrocytes, the joints in that line the knee joint, are still aging. They're already aged. They're still aging.
Yeah.
What you've
Yeah.
done is put in some new cells. And what we're saying is let's go one step beyond that and simply take the cells you've got and reset them so that they act like normal joint tissue, normal chondrocytes in this case. So we're not putting in stem cells. We're just taking the cells you've got and resetting them back to normal.
That
It's
is
much more efficient.
absolutely. It sounds
And
amazing.
it involves a lot fewer needles, by the way.
Yeah. So this would be, of course, you're just going to start trials, but in the future, in the near future, this will be taken orally. It would be a pill, or it would be an IV treatment.
Sorry about that background noise.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, my dogs have gotten excited about somebody coming up the driveway. Yes, right now for the human trials, we're anticipating we're going to start with this as what's called intrathecal. Actually, it's like a lumbar puncture because we're going after Alzheimer's. But it could
Oh, I
easily be
see.
given IV, and in the long run, we could give it orally.
So the main focus right now is Alzheimer's, but just like any other thing that would cure chronic disease or deal with any any aging process. My question is, what could be the effects of someone taking that if they had none of those conditions, no Alzheimer's, no osteoarthritis or anything like that? Especially, I guess, among all the biohackers, it would become very popular if they want to, improve their performance and health and
Well, I
just the
agree.
state they're in,
You know,
even if they're 40 years
yeah.
old.
No, I think you're right. Essentially what we're doing is we're saying let's optimize cell function. So in the long run, we're talking about being able to reset some cell function optimally to something that you had when you were 20 or 30 or 40, sort of a young adult or something, rather than being, say, 60 or 70. And it applies throughout the body. It's just a question of where we can get entry to the right cells. Now, for strategic reasons, we're going after Alzheimer's because it's the high-hanging fruit. It's not the low, easy to get thing. It's the thing that everybody knows is impossible. We know it's fatal. We know there are no other treatments.
Yeah.
So that makes it an optimal candidate for us. And let me make this more practical. Let's say that you had a bad knee joint right now and you're thinking of osteoarthritis. And you, as I say, you go to your orthopedic surgeon. He says, well, we can put it in a knee joint. You're not eager to do that, but it's a known technology. You know what it's like, you know the risks, and you're not happy about it, but at least you know it. Now, instead of that, I come to you and say, I've got an experimental therapy, it's gene therapy. We're not quite sure about the risks. Would you like to try it? Most people who's answered would be, no, I'll wait. You do that 5 or 10 years and get back to me. Let me see what happens. Because there are alternatives. On the other hand, if I come to you and I say you've got Alzheimer's, you've got a mean time to death of about 8 years, there is no treatment, you're going to be in a nursing home in a couple of years, good luck. Would you like to try my experimental treatment? Your answer is, let's see, it's fatal. There's no other treatment that we know is effective. Yes. And that's exactly what we find. We find people are quite eager to sign on for this. It also makes it a lot easier from a regulatory standpoint. If I were treating wrinkles and I didn't know what the gene therapy might do, people would hesitate. So would the FDA.
Yeah.
But if I'm going after Alzheimer's, there's not a lot of an alternative. So yes, it's a much better target for us. Again, everybody knows we can't fix it. We know we can.
Wow. Yeah, Alzheimer's. My maternal grandfather died of Alzheimer's, or at least that's what the doctors said at the time. This was in the 90s. And it was painful. And every single friend I've had who've had their mom or dad or grandparents suffer from Alzheimer's is it's a pretty traumatic and appalling thing to
You
happen in
remember,
your family, right?
remember J.K. Rowling and J.K. Rowling's book? They had the Dementors, and the Dementors came around and stole your soul. That's what Alzheimer's does. It steals your soul.
Yeah. Do we know what causes Alzheimer, or is it a variety of factors, or?
That's an odd question because again, what you find is that most people are going after the downstream effects rather than the upstream causes. And it's beginning to be apparent to people, for example, those looking at beta amyloid, that no matter what you do to it, doesn't seem to make a difference. And I think we're going to find the same thing with tau proteins and with mitochondrial changes and so on. These are all downstream effects. It would be like me saying, Damas, you've got Ebola. You've got about 8 days to die. It's good. You've got that long to live. You're going to die of Ebola, but I can take care of your fever for you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, doc, but
Yeah.
how about curing Ebola?
Yeah.
And that's
How about that?
I can take care of your blood pressure, or I can take care of your bleeding, but I can't make you live. That's kind of where we are with Alzheimer's. People are focused on these essentially symptoms, downstream effects, rather than asking themselves, what is upstream that causes all of these? And more people have begun to realize that it has something to do with what are called glial cells. But again, we've got good reason over the past 20 years to be sure that what it is a change in the way those glial cells function, and it's one we can reset, so we will.
Could you explain what glial cells are?
Well, most of us know about nerves in your brain, neurons in your brain, but there are these host of other cells, and actually there are multiple different kinds of them. But these cells are critical. Think of them as cells that don't physically support your neurons so much as they sort of functionally support your neurons. They take care of them.
Okay.
They are the staff. They are the nursing home. They are the nurses. They are the docs taking care of your neurons. They take care of the day-to-day problems of the neurons. And they divide. And as they divide, telomeres shorten. And as telomeres shorten, it changes gene expression. And the upshot is they stop taking care as quickly of this recycling. For example, beta amyloid, tau proteins, and so on. And you can actually see this measurably when you look at the cells. Older cells, again, don't pick up the beta amyloid, bring it in, break it down, make new. They don't cycle it as fast. The upshot is you get Alzheimer's.
I see. I want to go back to the idea of the maintenance. So,
good.
If there were two things that are complementary, would be the nourishment and then the maintenance of your, say, house, like you were saying, right?
Well, not just the nourishment. I mean, think of the other things. For example, whether you're smoking or not. If let's say I have a house again, and my maintenance is critical. And as I say, the quality of the material I use to maintain a house is also critical. But so is the amount of damage I put the house through. If I drive my car into the house, I've created a maintenance problem. And the same would be true of smoking. We could talk about exercise. We could talk about all those things that we've known for thousands of years. Your doctor tells you, your grandmother tells you, your mother tells you, and we don't do these things. We all, have that extra helping of something, and we don't exercise, and we don't take care of ourselves. But those are critical too. So it's not just a matter of the nourishment, but it's the way you treat your house. As I say, do you start a fire in your house with a blowtorch? Not a good idea. Do you drive your car sloppily into it? You let your kids play with dynamite? These are important issues, and they have nothing to do per se with nourishment or with maintenance. It's the amount of damage you cause. Or another example would be going out and getting sunburns every day. Well, you're asking for it, and that's not nutrition, not nourishment, but it sure is critical. So it's both a matter of the maintenance and all the other things, including nourishment, but generally your behavior.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it is all, I mean, it's maybe because I'm a chef, but I understand everything as nutrition. So it's all the same exchange of genetic stimuli, it's kind of like sunshine or...
Hey, Tomas, you're in Hawaii, yes?
No, I used to be in LA. I'm in Bogota for a few months in Colombia right now.
Well, okay.
I was in Tokyo, then New York, then Los Angeles. Now I'm in Bogota.
日本語がわかりますか? Do you speak in Japanese?
わかりますよ。
日本語が少しわかりますけど、まだちょっとじゃありません。Hey,
東京で4年間住んでた。
I'm going to have to tell you about macadamia baklava, which is really good. Okay.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, with real vanilla beans and use maple syrup rather than honey, and you can get really places.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Is that in Hawaii?
Well, it depends. You can get macadamia nuts anywhere these days, but
Yeah, but
a little lemon zest, a touch of pear liqueur, and really good filo. Yeah.
Yum, that sounds delicious.
We'll have to eat together sometime.
That sounds,
I'll tell you,
yes.
we'll trade recipes and we'll drool over it. Meantime,
Sounds like
that's
a
why
plan.
you do nutrition. Onward with rejuvenation and regeneration.
Yes. So to go back to the other idea, which you mentioned 5 minutes ago about my question about the causes rather than the symptoms, I think that's just
Yeah.
the mainstream conventional medicine approaches things like that. There's an emergency, we need to fix this symptom, but we're not looking at the causes of. That's why I think food, lifestyle, and some help with the latest groundbreaking science and all that, kind of like the work you're doing, is awesome because um,
And this has been true historically, Tomas. I mean, if you think about polio, if you go back to 1953, before we had the first vaccine to cure polio in a sense, people were talking about only nutrition or exercise or all sorts of things. And they were important, but the vaccine was more important. But we have a tendency to try to deal with things in a Band-Aid approach. So if you went to a doctor for polio in those days, the Band-Aid was rehab. Well, it's not a bad thought, but it didn't cure polio either.
yeah.
No, we need to strike a little deeper, in this case, a polio vaccine. And these days, we need to strike deeper for Alzheimer's and age-related diseases. It's not a matter of cardiac rehab. It's a matter of preventing that heart attack in the first place.
Beautiful. And what else is exciting you? Is there anything else being developed? I mean, I don't want you to talk about maybe your competition or something like that, but is there any other thing being studied or developed with cells or with that maintenance or cleanup? Or what I'm saying is, besides telomeres, or what was the other way to pronounce it?
Telomerase.
Telomerase. I like telomerase.
Telomerase.
Okay.
There's also telomerase, if you call me on the telephone or watch television. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny you ask that because, all right, let me go forward in the future 50 years. And
Sweet.
ask, what will medicine
Beautiful.
will have basically two main specialties. There'll be the emergency things. You got hit by a car or whatever you do in 50 years. Maybe it won't be a car.
You fall off your flying car or something.
Whatever. But there's the emergency stuff that needs to be done emergently, the trauma surgeon, the ER doc, and so on. But then there's the fixing problems. And there you're mostly looking at genetic therapy. And I think you're looking at least 5 different kinds, but let me focus on 2 of them. One is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, which is dealing with age-related disease and curing it, preventing and curing age-related disease, which we've never done before. But the other is preventing and curing genetic disease. So there's a friend of mine, Brian Casper, who is he works for a company called Avexis. Actually, he founded it. He's the chief scientific officer. And they just showed that they can cure spinal muscular atrophy. Well, they do this with a gene therapy. You have an abnormal gene, they go in and give you a normal gene. That entire sort of approach, CRISPR, there are a number of things that are like this, but they're generically gene therapies. Those will be critical. Those are the kind of things that will allow us to cure sickle cell, cure, in this case, I'm looking at, things like hemophilia B, cure, diabetes, cure things that have a genetic predilection or direct genetic cause. And again, so what you're going to see is that the big thing in medicine really now that's coming along is gene therapy, not small molecular approaches like here's a statin, take this 4 times a day and good luck. But let's cure
just literal
gene
editing,
in the first place.
Right?
Yeah, really.
Sort of like removing, fascinating.
Fix it. Yeah. Again, not just putting Band-Aids on it, not just here's a pill 4 times a day, but let's prevent the problem. Not just say, let's see if we can lower your blood pressure, but let's see if we can prevent the problem from occurring in the first place. Let's make sure you don't have high blood pressure.
Yeah, 50 years sounds like an insane amount of time. If the last 10 years...
faster than that. I just went forward that much.
Yeah.
We're going to
It'll be a lot faster, right?
We're already seeing this with spinal muscular atrophy. In fact, Novartis just bought that company for $8.7 billion, which is unheard of.
Wow.
But what they're thinking is, this is the new wave of medicine.
Yeah.
The new wave of medicine is not take this pill 4 times a day. It's can we actually prevent and cure diseases? Yes, we can. We're just beginning. So I find it somewhat startling to see so many people who are very bright people, very well educated, very well trained, they have academic positions, and they're still focused on small molecular approaches. It's as though they are dealing with 21st century problems, but using 20th century approaches. And not surprisingly,
Yeah.
they keep failing. That's why.
Yeah. I always remember Yuval Harari's *Sapiens* when he talks about the fact that we were several species of Homo. There was Homo sapiens, Floresiensis, Neanderthals, and so on and so forth, and then just us. Sapiens took over, and it was us. And then in his following book, he says we're probably at the moment where we're very soon going to be another 5 or 6 or more species of Homo, right? Like there's going to be Homo, I don't know, upgradans and Homo biocyberneticus, or I don't know what the names are going to be, but this ability that we've developed with synthetic biology and all these advances in medicine to recreate things or go straight into their genes and remove something is just mind blowing.
Yes, I think so too. The thing that always intrigued me about Harari's book is when he talked about the cognitive revolution.
Yeah.
And what he suggested is that sometime back about 100,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago, we developed the ability to think about things that don't exist. And I think that he gives the example of, for example, General Motors or IBM.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as IBM. It's a concept. And you can kill it with another concept like a court order, but you can't kill it with a gun or a cannon. It doesn't exist in a sense. And neither does Tuesday or freedom or democracy or capital. None of these things exist. They're these concepts.
Yeah.
I mean, what exists is my coffee cup, And it was intriguing for me, and I realized this years ago. I used to work with a gorilla called Coco. Coco's the first gorilla I was spoke, and I would babysit her.
You used to work with Coco?
Well, I was the babysitter. Coco
oh my God, that's amazing. I've seen
But
videos, and it's just mind blowing.
All of her concepts were concrete. Monster, lunch, tickle.
Wow.
These were concepts you could actually see. And it's true. She didn't have any concepts like Tuesday or freedom. They weren't there. But all of her concrete concepts were there. And I thought, this is just like Harari's book about the cognitive revolution.
Yeah.
But again, although some of us live too much in the invisible world, we fret about things that sort of don't exist. And instead of being, as it were, the Zen attentiveness and paying attention to reality, we live off in this imaginary world. But those are also the places that we get the tools to do these things you're just talking about, to be able to alter the genes, to be able to get better food, to be able to clean our water supply, to be able to do things we otherwise couldn't do. Yeah, they're critical tools. This cognitive revolution made us who we are. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that all those stories, those imagined orders, like Harari says, they're kind of like the invisible structure of everything around us. They're, like particles and waves. We don't see them. And the way we perceive the world is just right here. Like, what's his name? This amazing author as well, scientist from the U.S., Robert Lanza.
Yeah, Bob Lanza, right. Actually, he's from South Africa.
Oh, okay.
Originally, but
I remember
US, right.
he was talking. He had a chapter in his book Beyond Biocentrism where he said, "Where is the universe?" And he was like, "Well, it's right here, because the way we perceive, the universe is in our brain. Every single animal."
It's funny you mention him. I just sent him an email yesterday, so it's fun to hear you bring up Bob Lanza. Okay.
Well, I'm hoping I can have a good chat with him. We'll see. Yeah.
You should.
Yeah. So, if anyone's interested in finding out more about your work, or whether they can do something and kind of like improve their health with some telomerase activator or something, is there anything available right now on the market?
Well, one, go ahead and read the book, The Telomerase Revolution. It's out in 10 different global editions and 7 or 8 languages. How's your Mandarin? Okay. The other place, of course, is you can go to my website, michaelfossel.com. And right now I'm doing a blog where I'm leading people through the entire description of how all of this works. But you could also keep an eye on a biotech company called Telesite. We're trying to stay off the radar, certainly under the radar.
Because you also talk about all these cyclical relationships to our experience of being alive in this body and all that. What would you recommend people they do to take care of all that maintenance and all that? of their flesh and bone house.
Well, sometimes people have said to me, how can I live a longer, healthier life? And I say, wear your seatbelt. Well, it doesn't affect the aging process, but it certainly affects, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of pieces of advice like that, and as I've said already on this interview, most of that advice you have heard before. Your mother told you, your doctor told you. Your mother doesn't charge as much as your doctor, but it's the same advice.
Yeah.
Don't smoke, exercise, eat right. All of these things we know. Fasten your seatbelt. Don't antagonize people with weapons. They're critical things in life, but they're not sexy, and yet they're critical. Back to nutrition. Eating a reasonable diet. Now, there's kind of interesting. There was a talk I gave on nutrition and aging a couple of years ago. In fact, I've given it several times. And the very first slide I put up is this funny little fuzzy animal. And I turn to my class of 50 or 60 students and I say, does anybody know what this animal is? Blank look. And I say, this is Lemmus lemmus. It's the Norwegian lemming. Almost everything you know about nutrition is lemming behavior. It's fashion. People go rushing right off the cliff about these things. In the 50s and 60s, they warned us that we shouldn't eat butter and eggs. You need to take oleomargarine, a hydrogenated form of oil.
Yeah.
Well, now we know that that's bad, but a lot of the things that we're so sure of, I suspect if we read a generation, people will look back and say, how could we have been so foolish back then?
Yeah.
So I guess the answer is, again, eat reasonably, but be careful about sort of the latest fad. If I think about low carbohydrate, high carbohydrate, low fat, high fat, low protein, high protein. I mean, it just goes on and on. So be a little careful about lemming behavior and rushing off the cliff. That's all. I don't mean there isn't such a thing as a reasonable diet, but there are a lot of things that I'm sure are unreasonable. Don't look at me to tell you which ones are which.
Yeah. I'm very excited about. I mean, in LA, I while I was finishing my documentary Beyond Food on food and health, I was also cooking privately for entrepreneurs and actors and all that stuff, and they all were suffering from countless digestive disorders and all that jazz, and they were doing one test and another test and allergy here and intolerance here, and they all came different. So what really excites me about science is that sometimes, I'm really excited about Viome. I don't know if you've heard about them, but it's kind of like allowing your biology to tell you what you already know. I mean, to me, my test results came out.
Listen to your body. Listen to it.
Yeah. So circling back to the idea of regeneration, circling back to the idea of a cyclical understanding of our experience.
Well, back on nutrition before you do.
Yes.
If I could prove to you that you'd live a longer lifespan by living in the basement in the dark and eating nothing but sawdust, would you do it? No, I would have another chocolate mousse.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm reminded that people get so caught up in worrying about their diet that they cause so much stress that they make themselves sick.
Yes.
I have seen at least a half a dozen patients in my career who came in for high blood pressure. And I'd say to them, how do you know your blood pressure is high? And they say, well, I've taken it 10 times today and every time it's high. My first recommendation is throw out the blood pressure cup. No wonder you've got high blood pressure. You're worrying too much.
Yeah,
But
totally.
you see what I mean? There's a point where the answer is chill.
Yes.
Just chill.
Yeah.
Have an ice cream, Anyway, sorry, back to regeneration.
No, I was saying that, it's beautiful how you, through science, through breathing, through other, mediums, you can just reconnect with your biology and with your nature and do things just as simple as taking a breath, It's not sexy, it doesn't look like it's epic, but it might make you chill, very fast.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited. And hopefully we'll get to cook someday.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to tell you about chicken falsi and we'll have a dozen different things we'll have to talk about. That'll be kind of fun.
And why is it that you speak a little Japanese, Michael?
I had to go 20 years ago when my first book came out about all this. I was invited to come over to Japan, which I enjoyed thoroughly.
Yeah.
Had a great time. Ended up I love Japanese. It's a nice language.
Yeah.
I've lost most of it. Can't remember it.
Yeah.
My children, my daughter, I remember before she could count in English, could count to 1,000 in Japanese. She's probably forgotten it all.
Yeah.
But just like languages a lot.
Sweet. All right.
How about you?
I have a gift for languages. I was born in Colombia, but I grew up in Paris, and I speak 5 pretty well.
Vous parlez français, vous parlez français
Je
comme
parle
oui.
français, falo
C'est bien.
português, falo
Bien.
espanhol.
Y habla español. ¿Me parla italiano?
Parlo un po', sì.
Ah, ok. Well, me lee l'Enica.
No, what's that?
Oh, I mean, we try other things. About 14 of them I can fake, but I forget them all.
And then I ended
Like
up,
you, I put on a language like a coat and then I take it off again.
yeah. I did my master's in Japan with a Japanese government scholarship in visual arts.
Oh,
And
so
yeah.
that's that.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. Have a ton of more questions, but maybe for a
Dude,
future
let me know.
conversation. Yes,
And we'll have to talk about gardening next too. That's always a delight for me. So,
that would be great. I mean,
or meditation,
yeah, that sounds great.
or quantum physics, whatever.
Are you
So,
working on
but meantime,
Are you working on
I get
another
back to work.
book or
No,
no?
no,
No, I guess
it's like I think about academic papers. Academic papers
Yeah.
serve a great purpose if you're trying to get tenure, but they don't necessarily get the work done.
yeah.
So, for example, we have some internal papers on cancer and telomerase. No intention of publishing them. They're not for publication. They're just
Yeah.
trying to help us get the work done.
Sweet. That's a good point. Yeah. Well, Michael, thanks again for your time. For everybody watching this, please follow Michael. Go to michaelfossel.com. Check out his book, The Telomerase Revolution. And if you like this content, give us a review on iTunes, hopefully a 5-star. And I'll see you soon, Michael.
Look forward
Or I'll
to
talk soon. All right.
Gracias, Tomás. Igualmente.
ありがとうございます。
おはようございます。
お疲れ様でした。お疲れ様でした。フォーセルさん。バイ、マイク。
Possible. Bye.